Hey guys, a little late today. Was trying to get set up here. Bit disorganized today. Well, I don't look that bad. I guess slightly organized. Okay, so hopefully the echo is not too bad today. I'm just gonna shoot this link over to Julia so she can get it posted for everybody. Jesus. Hey Brian, nice to see you as well. Bjorn, first as usual. I don't know, man. You must be sitting on like F5 or something on YouTube. So it's pretty. I don't know. It's pretty amazing. So, all right. Let's see if I can get these AMA questions somehow readable on the screen here. Jesus. Sorry, it's been a long day already. I'm trying to make this work here. All right. Well, that kind of works. Okay. So how's the echo? How's the echo today, guys? Better than last week? Same. Cool. Okay. All right. I'm gonna give it 2 minutes, I think, roughly, and then we'll start. I can actually see my screen in the reflection. It's kind of weird. Okay. Posting. Yeah. The word lending is, let's say, a regulated word. So the use of the word lending would mean that, well, you're giving credit. If you're giving credit, you need the ability to do so from a regulatory perspective. So. No. Well, Maris, who sits over here, my multitasking assistant, is executive assistant, is moved because she didn't want to be on the camera. Oliver actually sits over here. You can't see him out of the way here, but he just vanished when this video came on. And then we have on this side of the room finance, and then compliance behind. Well, compliance, I guess, actually behind us, but even though I'm pointing straight ahead, it's behind us. So yeah, this part of the office is really the main entrance. So you don't see. There's not usually nobody sitting there anyway, except for Maris, who just had to leave her desk. Funding. Yeah, we'll touch on funding in a bit. We are now in the drafting process of an agreement for funding. That the first phase of funding will cover about 20% of what we were initially looking for CoinMetro, and we have a 90-day window that these participants will possibly fund the entire round. So we just got the, let's say, numbers from them late last night, and now we're drafting documentation. eToro, yeah. Well, the guys at Crypto 101 are great guys. They actually are part of this equity raise, guys. So they're actually part of the funding round. So, but they got to pay the bills just like everybody else does, and eToro sponsors their podcast. So, great. That's fine, right? I mean, we live in a world where businesses need to make money. So, unfortunately, we're not funding their podcast. Maybe one day we will. But for now, we're not. But yeah, they actually are participating in the equity round, guys. So they definitely believe in us, and I think they do a good job. To be honest, I think they ask some decent questions. I like their show. It's one of the only ones I've ever actually listened to, and I'm not talking about the one I was on. I have listened to some of their other podcasts, and yeah, I don't listen to many. So, all right, guys, I guess we can kick it off. So let's see, it's about 5 minutes in here. So yeah, let's kick it off. Okay, so for those of you who've never joined us before, my name is Kevin Murcko. I'm CEO here at CoinMetro. Lovely logo you see on my shirt. Sitting in our offices here in Tallinn, Estonia. This is what we like to call This Week in Crypto. We have a little agenda we like to follow. Start off first by going over 10 pieces of news that were curated by our elite Telegram group over the past week. I give a quick comment on each of the news stories. Usually takes about 1 minute. That's about 10 minutes worth of content, more or less. Then we go into Kevin Explains Crypto. Basically, every week, these same elite Telegram users vote on what term I should basically define during the show. That's either a word or a phrase that has to do with crypto or maybe finance in general sometimes both, because sometimes those terms can overlap. So I give a quick definition. Then we move on to Reddit questions that were also curated over the last week, as well as live questions that come in here, right here to my right or left, depending on how you're looking at this screen, through YouTube. So let's get going. By the way, guys, just so everybody knows, our show is also picked up by blockslive.tv. So on Mondays, you can catch it on blockslive.tv. So thanks a lot to Blocks Live for supporting us and throwing us up there. We're waiting for their new studio to be refurbished so that I can come back on Crypto Now. Always had a good time on that show, and I think lots of good content is flowing through that network. So just waiting for that studio to come back up, guys. But yeah, thanks again for the support. So here we go, guys. Let's go to news article number 1 of 10. U.S. crackdown, crypto crackdown, Telegram token sale rejected by SEC. So let me tell you a little bit of real news on this Telegram token situation. So Telegram's actually playing this one quite artfully. This is a bit of smoke and mirrors, I think, on their side. Look, Telegram knew, now, this is still an opinion, so I'll throw that out there. This is an opinion. This is an insider information. But I think my opinion is probably very close, if not exactly the fact in this case. So Telegram knew that the SEC was going to come after them. Absolutely knew it. Not only for the size of what they raised, but where they raised it, how much money came from U.S. investors, the delays, etc. They absolutely knew. Now, the SEC hadn't come forward to actually file a charge or anything, file anything against Telegram, because Telegram never actually linked Ton, the issuer, to the parent company that owns Telegram. They did that just about 10 days ago, maybe. Inside of their TOS, their terms of service, they linked Ton to Telegram. Almost immediately after that happened, I think within 48 hours, if I'm not mistaken, the SEC filed their initial papers against Telegram and Ton. Now, Telegram knew this was going to happen. Why did they wait to make the link? What was the strategy there? Here's the strategy. They're not ready to launch their product. They had until October 31st, a self-imposed deadline. We all know about deadlines here at CoinMetro, right? They had a self-imposed deadline, which they can't meet, but they knew they weren't going to be able to meet it. So they strategically waited to link the two companies until as close as possible as they could to October 31st. Because I'm sure inside of their terms of service, they also had a clause that if there was a regulatory issue, that they would be able to extend. Or they at least thought, if that isn't there, that telling their user base, look, we have a regulatory issue or something out of our hands, we're going to need a bit more time. They basically bought time. They already knew they were going to get hit by the SEC. What will happen? Well, they will refund the roughly $500 million that was raised from U.S. investors, which is a little less than 1/3 of what they raised in total. They will claim no guilt. The SEC will claim victory. Telegram will claim victory, and they will just simply move on. That may take anywhere from 1 to 6 months to unfold, but that's what's going to happen. So we'll see it unfold. We'll see if I'm right or not. So moving on, number 2 on a list of 10, as Facebook's Libra faces headwinds, China is racing to launch its own cryptocurrency. Talked about this a bunch of times, guys and gals. The Facebook Libra is modeled like a sovereign national bank. It also has a population, talking about Facebook and all its other properties, of up to 2 billion users, which would make it one of the biggest nation-state currencies, basically, on the face of the planet. Not only that, but they're they're taking deposits in fiat currencies, holding those deposits, and then paying interest from those deposits. Obviously, in some currencies, you're not making any interest. Depends on how they hold those currencies. But the interest is paid back to the note holders. This is basically recreating a combination of a hedge fund and a central bank. And central banks don't want to have to compete against other non-state central banks. Thus, that's why they have an issue. Facebook will have to restructure themselves a bit for any nation state to allow them to actually move forward, and they will. They may lose all the initial, MOU signers in the process. Who cares? They're MOU signers. They signed a document that they can get out of legally whenever they want. And I think most people that knew that fact expected some of them to jump ship. They all got a bit of PR initially. Hey, they're crypto friendly. Yay. And that's it. Moving on, I think Facebook will end up revamping. They may cancel the project and then come back with Libra 2.0 at some point, or they may simply move forward. But the way they've structured it just doesn't work. And whoever helped them structure it probably should have realized that. Number 3 on the list of 10, Coinbase gets e-money license in Ireland, expanding European foothold. Yeah, the whole Coinbase already has an e-money license in the UK. Obviously, this is probably their Brexit strategy to get a license somewhere else. Most companies end up going to Lithuania, though Ireland was, for a bit of time before Lithuania became the place to go for EMI licenses, was a place where several companies, Google actually has an e-money license that's acquired from, actually a few of the big fintechs have e-money licenses acquired through Ireland. So it's not about expansion or European foothold, guys. It's a Brexit strategy. They already had a European foothold, right? But they had it through licensing they acquired in the UK. So obviously, this is just a Brexit strategy to maintain what they already have. So not really news. And to be honest, not all that savvy or anything. It's just, this is what businesses do. There's a risk. They have to mitigate the risk. Number 4 on the list of 10, Binance Coin ETP goes live on 6 Swiss stock exchange. So for those of you who don't know, an ETP is a exchange traded paper. What does that mean? That basically means it's a paper-based asset that represents or a paper-based right that represents some underlying asset. You can create ETPs based on a mirage of things. They can be based on other assets, commodities. There's ETPs for gold, silver, all kinds of things. There's also ETPs sometimes for property. There also can be ETPs for other funds. So BNB has an ETP. I don't know if that rhymes or it just sounds ridiculous. I don't get why they would I get why they would do this. 6 is looking to basically kind of try to do what we're doing globally with the CSD and the MTF, regionally in Switzerland. Now, in order to do that, they need to show obviously that they're a bit savvy when it comes to crypto products. BNB is one of the supposedly most traded crypto products in the crypto market. So I think for 6, it's about just progressively moving forward. Kind of surprises me a bit that they would choose BNB. Considering that it comes from Binance and considering that they are a regulated stock exchange, but hey, they chose it. That's great. On that though, I don't see a lot of institutional interest for people who know what ETPs are. I don't see a lot of institutional interest in BNB. Not so much because of its price point or how the technical analysis looks or fundamentals. Not so much, but more so from the underlying issuer. But we'll see. Number 5 on a list of 10, NASDAQ lists an AI-powered index of crypto markets top 100 performers. At NASDAQ, also somebody that's in the game, guys, looking a little bit further down the road to conquer this CSD market infrastructure thing. And so again, baby steps for them. This is definitely a baby step. Indexes are created about things all the time. This isn't something too big. Again, we've seen that backed. We saw the CMOE. The CMOE has some type of liquidity in the market, but we saw the CME back out of the futures market, the cashback futures. Now you see BACK that has Bitcoin back futures, which a crypto market would have expected would have actually been a great thing for crypto because they're underpinned by crypto and not by just cash. Meaning when someone buys a backed future, they're actually buying a Bitcoin, or not buying a Bitcoin. They're buying a futures contract that's underpinned by an actual Bitcoin. And the market didn't do anything with that. And so, why do you expect that an AI-powered index of crypto markets top 100 is going to do absolutely anything for the underlying market? It's probably not going to. It's not really what the incumbents, the old school guys, the old boys around the conference tables are just simply trying to dip their feet into the market. And this is how they do it. It's not really the way they should be doing it, but it's not the way they're doing it. But it's not really having much of an effect on the market. So these news stories now don't really move the market at all, where a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, this would have moved the market for probably 30% over a few days. Now it doesn't do anything. Ernst & Young, number 6, launches blockchain tool to help bring accountability to public finances. Yay, Ernst & Young, 10 years after blockchain was already talked about as being an audible and traceable, transparent database that's decentralized, decides to use it to bring accountability to public finances. Wow, it took them 10 years to put 2 and 2 together to get 4. Congrats, guys, at Ernst & Young, showing how awesome you are, and how visionaries, how many visionaries must be on the board at Ernst & Young to finally put this together. There's such a hard jump to launch this product. What I would say is, look, I talked about this in Mexico actually back before we did our token sale, and I actually just read a story that Mexico is actually now looking to put public finances on the blockchain. So you're welcome, Mexico. For the idea. Anyway, guys, this is kind of, they should have done this 5, 6, 7 years ago. They're doing it now. That's great. But, it's little too late for that to really make any big difference, either for Ernst & Young or for the industry as a whole. Number 7, Binance burns over 2 million BNB, showing tremendous accumulated revenue of 1 billion. Okay, so I'm going to put on my math hat here. I'm pretty good at math. I used to be better at it, but I'm still okay. So let's assume, I remember seeing at least 1 billion in volume reported by Binance on a daily basis, probably for at least the last year, at least, right? So let's take a year at 1 billion a day. What's that? 356 billion, right? Now we know they were charging for most of this past year, 0.2%? That's 1/5 of 1%. If they made 1%, how much would they have made? Raise your hand. 3.56 billion, right? Now we got to take 80% of that, right? 80% of that, right? Because, it's 1/5. So I'm going to take 20% of that, right? So it's at 712 million. So that tells me that over 2 years, now if you do 2 years, that's 1.424 billion, right? So that's already more than this huge figure that we're talking about here now. But we haven't added in yet their listing fees. We haven't added in mergers, some money they may have made on acquisition, selling of their BNB token, which I'm sure they do, which obviously wouldn't be included in there if we're just talking about trading revenue. So what that tells me is that this rumor that some of Binance's trading volume might be fake is probably 100% true. So moving on. Number 8, list of 10, report, Bank of Canada exploring digital currency to track people's spending habits. So remember, guys, if anybody can remember, one of the first shows we did, roughly, I think a year ago now, someone asked me if I thought that sovereign nation states were going to put their currency on a blockchain, make a crypto dollar, crypto whatever. And I said yes. And the Commonwealth would probably be one of the first major countries to do it. I think I might have said the first major country. So obviously I was wrong. China did. China is in the process. Haven't done it yet, though, so never know. Well, there you go. Canada, definitely a Commonwealth country. I think, like I said, all countries are going to do this. All major countries, all smaller countries, it will happen. The traceability and accountability on this type of system is far exceeds all the different database technologies that are currently used for credit cards, and obviously cash is, forget it. But when it comes to credit cards or bank movements, you're talking about different databases at different banks connected to SWIFT, who also uses a different database structure that's from like 1983, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they will absolutely do it. So anyway, Canada, yeah, almost, my opinion almost came true. Number 9 on list 10, Chainalysis helped the U.S. Department of Justice shut down child porn site. Okay, so great on Chainalysis, but I have to say that it really was because of an IP exploit. Somebody found the IP address and then allowed everybody to figure out, to gain more information. What I would say, though, is, obviously, hopefully nobody listening to this believes that this is some type of injustice. These types of things should be shut down. What it does show now, if you're on the other side of the fence here, because I saw a few posts about, I don't know if it was on Twitter or where I was, but somebody had posted this news and somebody was like, this just goes to show that Bitcoin, helps, child molesters or some nonsense like that. And to be honest, when you think about it, it's, well, I guess maybe. But at the same time, cash, US dollar, euro, how many deaths and how much bad shit has that funded over the years? Way more than Bitcoin, that's for sure. What it tells us, though, is that, one, we can actually find these people to a certain extent using these technologies, which means that which is good and bad. Us telling them that we can find them means they will stop using it, which might be good for the Bitcoin community in general, because we'll stop hearing all this nonsense about how somehow it just fuels criminal activity. But on the other side, it also stops us from being able to track these guys as well as we can, because they'll stop using it. So it's a bit of a catch-22, but I'm glad they got, I'm glad they did what they did. Chain analysis helped. I'm glad they helped. Good news for them. We'll see if it turns out to be good or bad for Bitcoin in the end. The 18th millionth Bitcoin to be mined today, number 10, only 3 million left. So I said this on Twitter, I think, if nobody saw it, but everybody who makes this argument. Now, look, I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist. I'm not an Ethereum ETH head. I'm not a maximalist of anything. I'm a realist, and I like to use my brain, and I like to look at facts, and I like to compare facts that are against me and for me to figure out, more or less where my argument sits, right? So everybody that says that Bitcoin will be worth, a cajillion, bajillion dollars in the future because it has a limited supply, and that there's only 21 million that are going to be mined, and eventually it's just going to go to 1 billion because people are going to start using it, and blah, 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 is not thinking clearly. They're not thinking clearly because as the price rises, people have less of an opportunity to buy a full Bitcoin. Right now, most people in the world can't even buy close to 1 Bitcoin. They buy a fraction of a Bitcoin. A Bitcoin can be fractionalized into 1/100 millionth of a Bitcoin. That's a Satoshi, right? So as price rises, and price will continue to rise to a certain point when it hits a ceiling, when the amount of people that can actually buy in due to adoption is going to mean they're going to buy the smallest unit possible. And once that smallest unit becomes too expensive for them to buy, or gets close, and when I say too expensive, guys, remember, there are, I think, roughly 1 billion people that live in the world that make less than $1 a day. So, okay, everybody kind of sinking in a bit. All right. So the adoption would have to be global. At the same time, you would have to hit a ceiling at some point, because as the price gets higher, people cannot buy it. So there's not 21 million Bitcoin in the world. There will, or 18 million Bitcoin in the world. There is, let's see now, at 21 million, there would be what, 2.1 trillion? There's 1.8 trillion Satoshis. So yeah, that's a small supply, right? 1.8 trillion. Who agrees with that? Okay, guys, let's move on to Kevin Explains Crypto here. This week's term is margin call. So who here, by a show of hands or whatever, dots on a screen, I guess, here on YouTube, who actually knows what the term margin call means? Anybody actually know what it means? Anybody know the origin of the term margin call? Anybody want to give me the origin story? It should be pretty obvious from the word. Okay, so Jan says, okay, so a few people saying they know. Okay, so I'll give you the origin story. It's going to be a long Kevin Explains Crypto this week. So the origin story, it's called margin call because obviously, first of all, margin didn't really come into play until markets went somewhat electronic. There was margin beforehand, but it was handled in a bit of a different way. When margin went electronic, it was a bit of a different story. We didn't have only end of day reports to work off of. People weren't trading on end of day charts. Correct. So a margin call, when you get a margin call, it essentially means that you've used up your available equity has now basically zeroed out in comparison to the amount of exposure you have on the market. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting stopped out. A margin call should always happen before stop out. Before there should be a buffer zone. And the margin call is basically to alert you, hey, buddy, by the way, if you don't add in more margin or close some of that exposure very shortly, you will get stopped out. It's called margin call because as we got into the initial parts of electronic trading, the broker used to call you and you would get a phone call. While broker would say, buddy, we need more money. And that's why it's called a margin call. Yeah, that's it. Margin call basically is you are at a point where if within X amount of time you don't fund your account, you will be stopped out. If you've already been stopped out, that's not a margin call, that's a stop out. If your positions are closed, you got a margin call sometime ago, sometime before, and now you're just stopped out. Okay, so we're gonna jump into live Q&A, but before we do that, I'm just gonna take a quick glance at Reddit questions. We don't have many, guys, so I'm gonna run through these real fast. Let's see. Show of dots who experienced a margin call. Probably. Yep, probably from getting a phone call. There you go, Roger Johnson. Boom. Okay. So from Reddit, guys. Now, for those listening from Blocks Live TV, just so you know, most of these questions are probably going to be about CoinMetro. Though there might be a few that aren't, but they're usually CoinMetro centric. So if all you did was come for the news, thank you, and see you next week. Okay, so Reddit questions, guys. So MC1887, do you think anyone will ever see ROI? So ROI on what? You're talking about token purchases? You're talking about equity? What are you talking about? I would probably think you're talking about token purchases because most of the people are probably token holders that are asking questions, I would imagine. So yes, obviously I do. I'm the biggest token holder out of anybody anywhere. So obviously, yes, I think there will be ROI. I think a lot of people look at crypto and they saw how quickly some businesses, like Binance, for example, were able to gain traction, and they think it's the norm. And they think if you don't gain the same amount of traction, somehow you're doing something wrong. But what people need to do is they need to back out, kind of take their blinders off and back out and look at, let's say, just industry as a whole, finance industry if you want. Things take time to create. They take time to structure. And the more time you spend in structuring, as long as you can maintain that business, the better ROI you will see in the end, right? The guys who get quick to ROI very, very many times are also quick to basically implode. And while that may not seem plausible to people right now, because this is their first rodeo, so to speak. They've never been in the financial markets before. They've never seen companies expand and then basically implode on themselves. But it happens all the time. So yes, obviously, yes, I do think ROI is coming, and I think ROI will come much faster than people anticipate. It takes years to get a good foundation. Most businesses take 3 to 5 years to go into profitability. Amazon took, I think, 17. I think I mentioned that probably a billion times on the show already. And maybe it's not, maybe people might say it's not the best example, but it's hard to take an example from crypto. In crypto right now, it's a cutthroat business. Most businesses are run by people that don't have experience. So they either get lucky and make a lot of money fast, or they don't get lucky and they're already closed. So you don't really have many examples of the guys that stuck around, did things right, didn't necessarily get lucky, but ended up having success. But I think CoinMetro is going to be on that list. And that's why I'm here every Friday talking to you guys. And sometimes, getting hit with some balls of shit every once in a while, that's my job. So yes, obviously, yes, I do think there will be ROI. I wouldn't be here if I didn't think there was. 6, my bad. Number 2 from Reddit. Hello, Kevin. What do you think will happen to Binance? Will they shut down? How will it play out? What do I think will happen to Binance? So there's many scenarios of what could happen to Binance. Look, there is a scenario where Binance stays around. That's a plausible scenario. Do I think it's a possible scenario, I should say. Do I think it's plausible? Not so much. I think the possibilities there are quite low. What I do think, though, is that at some point Binance may be too heavy for takeovers. Not so much. I do think, and as I mentioned earlier in the show, they made $1 billion in revenue. Well, if I just look at their daily volumes on CoinMarketCap times the amount that they charge for commission, they've made way more than that. And then we're not even talking about listing fees, where we all know they made a ton of money before they said that they didn't. That's already been, I think, proven. I don't know how many times. So somebody's got some wrong numbers here. So obviously, it's either way more than 1 billion, or it's way less. Or like everybody says, their volumes are fake. So you can pick which one you think that might be. The point is, I think they might be too heavy on paper for an immediate takeover. So what happens? I think either they get sold off in parts. I think they're trying to run a strategy where they open up multiple small Binances so that when the big Binance starts to crumble, gets a little bit more heavy, they can spread the risk. At the end of the day, I don't think Binance will be here. I don't think they will show for the test of time. I don't think Binance is going to be a leader in the tokenized market of the future, rather than just we are unregulated crypto market of today. As new regulation comes in, Binance and every other player like them, I don't think will exist. Whether they get bought out, whether the business simply dies, whether that's all those have different layers in them that you have to kind of peel away. What do I think will happen to CZ? Second question. That's a better question, actually. I do think there will be indictments at some point. You're seeing it with Tether now. You're seeing it with these are some of the initial bigger indictments and lawsuits. Not indictments yet for Tether, but lawsuits and things like that. I think eventually we will get there. You have to understand that Binance has run a lot of IEOs. There's a lot of U.S. participants on Binance, even though they say there isn't, and there was before. And because there was before, the U.S. can always go after them. It doesn't matter that they changed. I think there's a big file about Binance, and CZ would probably have an issue. The SEC and the U.S. government likes to make examples of big fish after they make examples and precedents from small ones. They've already made the precedents on the small ones. Now they're starting to go after the first big one. Binance is probably on that list. What prevents Binance from launching a Binance 2 like they made a Binance US? They didn't make a Binance US. They basically loaned out their name. They franchised their name to another company in the US that uses the name and their technology. It's not owned by Binance. There's no connection to Binance whatsoever. Now, again, this is an opinion of mine, but again, I would say I'm 99.9% factual on this one because that's just the way most business works. These aren't properties owned by Binance. These are properties that are basically franchised. It's like a Hilton hotel or a Marriott hotel. It's not a Marriott hotel. It's a hotel built by somebody that licenses the Marriott name, and they pay Marriott a royalty. Same thing here. What, I guess, asked, does CM want to be an online e-wallet payment like PayPal? I would never like to be like PayPal. I think PayPal, I used to think PayPal was the devil. Now I just think they're a demon. PayPal sucks, has always sucked. I hated them ever since they started. I know that a lot of people, PayPal Mafia made a lot of money off PayPal, and I think the idea was perfect timing. eBay needed a way to make payments. They had a bunch of merchants that were coming on board, and they had no way for these guys to collect credit cards. No credit card merchants would give these guys accounts because they were just normal, regular people with no businesses. PayPal filled a niche, and they filled it very well. But when they expanded outside of that and they started to get all ridiculous of freezing money for 6 months for no reason and others, it became like a police of money. That's when they went off the rails. And at that point, I haven't liked them since. I do not want to be like PayPal. The question is, do we want to actually provide outward payments? Yes, in the future with something like an e-money license or a payment institutional license, we will offer similar services to what a PayPal does, but that's not the goal of the company. It's one of the pieces of the ecosystem. We can make money doing it, and we have the infrastructure to do so, but it's not the goal. There will never be another PayPal because PayPal came just at the right time, and it's on the back of eBay that it became so big. There is no need now to fill that need. So creating another PayPal doesn't create another PayPal. I'm not going to become an Elon Musk if I take payments and allow people to pay for stuff online, especially with crypto. There's not much of a use case there yet, guys. Even though everybody's talking about it, doesn't really make any sense. I mean, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency is inherently slow. It inherently doesn't scale very well yet. It's just not made for payments yet. So there you go. I think the last question, two more questions on Reddit, guys, and then we'll jump over into YouTube. This is a good one, I guess. People probably like this one. Have you disclosed, this is from Danine84. That's DA9EL84. It's probably supposed to mean something. Maybe I'm too old to get it. I don't know. Have you ever disclosed how much CM's XCM holdings have been sold through normal trading on XCM after launch? If so, what was the number? Why did you change your profile picture on TG? You look like suspicious Kevin that has been fed a line of bullshit. Okay, he said BS, but anyway, we're all adults here, hopefully. So have we disclosed? I don't know if we disclosed. People have asked about it, but roughly that number sits between 20 and 25 million. Though not all of that was sold at market. Some of that was sold via OTC deals. Some of that was sold to some of the shareholders that came on as well via OTC deals. Some of it's vested. But the number sits between 20 and 25 million. That's why we're still here, guys. It's partially why we're still here. Apart from raising money and apart from shareholders investing more money into the company, XCM has kept us here. So yeah. What did you change? Why did you change your profile picture? To be honest, I don't know. I think I had the avatar in there, and now that kind of moving CSD and CoinMetro, and I'm going to start probably speaking more about capital markets and things like that. I just didn't want a confusion. So I wanted to make it a bit more ambiguous. So I changed my name to just Kevin Murcko, my name, rather than CoinMetro Kevin. That doesn't mean I'm stepping away from CoinMetro. I still spend the same amount of time here, if not more. I'm still promoting the business. I'm still working. I'm still doing everything I always do, if not more. It's just so that when we build out this Kevin brand, it's the Kevin brand, and that's the way it works. And it's inherently done to enhance the brand of CoinMetro as well. So Milhouse Van Houten, last question here. Bjorn asked it already, but tell us more about the funding. Brazilians are known, but care to elaborate. I like how he said Bjorn asked it already. This is obviously a Reddit question, right? So he doesn't know that Bjorn asked it already. He assumed, but he's right. So I care to elaborate on who the other group is and what you can expect. And also, is there potential CSD crypto partner besides Chainlink, and how are the talks with Chainlink? Okay, so the Brazilians right now are still kind of floating around because the Brazilian group has changed. The main guy's still there, but now there's one party that left, 2 or 3 other parties that are in discussion with them. So that's still kind of in flux. These new guys, I think there's 3 funds, I think it's 3 funds, and then several individuals. And these guys actually are connected to our friends at Crypto 101. And they have, let's say, been in talks for a bit. And I was introduced to those talks after several weeks. And those talks began to expand. And now we're in the final push here to get things done. We haven't signed an NDA or anything like that up to this point, but obviously these things, unless I'm told otherwise from the specific parties, are somewhat private matters. So can't really give any specific details, but these guys are there's a few groups come together that have made investments before together, and they're coming in together to CoinMetro and the CSD. Outside of that, let's say, and what you can expect and what they expect. I think we've pretty much come to a deal, guys. Now it's just about formalizing that deal on paper, and that's kind of where we are right now. So depending on how quick we can get that paper together, head of legal, paging Ingvar, then we should be able to move forward, I think, quite quickly, actually, because this has already been in process for quite some time. Other potential CSD crypto partner besides, well, I wouldn't say partner. I know everybody in this industry likes to say partner, like we're partnered with IBM, and that's because they're using IBM cloud servers, or we've partnered with whatever. It's not necessarily a partnership yet. It's trying to see if Chainlink and their Oracle system will work for 2 specific pieces of the CSD infrastructure, and I think it might, especially in phase 1. Phase 2, 3, 4, as we start to move and get more decentralized, it may become less of an issue. But at least for phase 1, possibly phase 2, I think it makes sense. So we were in talks with them to see if it makes sense. Right now, it seems like it makes sense. So aside from Chainlink, there's a lot of different blockchains that we've talked to and talked about and directly talked to. Algorand is one of them. There's a few others. But up to this point, most of the stuff we're creating in-house. When it comes to the first phase, we're going to be probably using Ethereum to show, at least for the initial asset issuances, how these things work. Mainly because, well, most asset issuances that are tokenized have been done on Ethereum. However, we're in talks with many different companies, many different blockchains, and companies that also exist in crypto and in the traditional finance world to see where the right connections may lie. Okay, so let's get on to AMA questions here, guys. So let me scroll back up, see what we got here. Anything new with the Parquet? I think we answered that. How long does CM's funds still last? Hey, Alex. So I get asked this question. I think I got asked this question every week, more or less, for the last, I don't know, 5 months. And it's always the same answer. So we've always had funds on tap that bring us from 1 to maybe 2.5 months in the future. And that's how we've run the company since December of last year. Funds that we've just about confirmed, at least for this first part of the investment from these groups, which may end up being more than it is currently. They're asking for about 90 days to be able to bring in more capital. But the funds that do come in will give us runway for several multiples of that. So it'll give us a more expansive runway that we will be able to then start to do actual aggressive marketing, and we will be able to expand the team a bit in some certain key areas where it's needed. Any updates around the debit card? So I just actually was WhatsApping back and forth. WhatsApping, is that a verb now? I guess it is. It is now. It is. WhatsApping back and forth with contact with a partner in London. I said partner, but a business partner in London who's helping us put these things together. So IBANs in UK in terms of technical feasibility are done. Debit card integration is done. They're waiting on their main underwriting bank, which is a very large institution. Won't name them just because I don't know who. Just doesn't really matter, I guess. To finalize the tech integration on their side so that they can start testing. They don't have a time frame on that right now, but they're pushing as hard as they can to that bank. The bank doesn't want to give a specific date. So I expect to have a bit better information than that, but that's where we stand right now with the integration. So the debit card and the IBANs are linked to the same bank, the same underwriting bank, the main underwriting bank, very big bank, based in the biggest economy in Europe. Probably pretty easy to guess who it is. One of the largest banks, also known for dabbling in alternative payment markets. Okay. Anyway, so they're waiting for them to finalize integration on their side. I will push every week. Every week, ask me the question again, and I'll give you the updates I have. How's that? Or you can tag me in Telegram. One Penn Plaza. Yep. How much has Parsec collected so far on their IEO sales? I haven't checked. I know they had some PR come out, and I think that they actually had a small group, I think, that was planning to come in and buy tokens, which already did. I don't know. I think we're sitting somewhere around, off the top of my head, I think it's about 40 to 50K, something like that. So anyway, I think that's what might be more than that now. I don't know. I haven't. I think the last time I actually asked for a number was sometime yesterday, but I've seen some other purchases roll in. I think that might be tied to the podcast as well. So Crypto 101 again, guys, playing a role. But yeah, it might even be higher than that. But we'll definitely get a tally right towards the end. So it's good. The sale ends on Sunday or Monday. So we'll see. How big is your link stack, and will you be at the yacht party after we make it? So links. So yeah, public exposure. I actually don't own any link right now. Unfortunately, like as a trader, I would have definitely bought link at one point in the past. That's for sure. I didn't because unfortunately, as an exchange owner, I do see sometimes a bit of a conflict of interest there, especially when I can talk directly to these CEOs and they may let slip some information. So I don't own link. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't buy it. But yacht party, yeah, look, I will definitely be there. So you guys support me, I'll support you and be at the yacht party. How do you increase the XCM market buy limits? Why did you increase the XCM buy limits? The books haven't grown over the last months. Why did you increase the XCM market buy limits? I believe market buy and sell limits have been increased. Look, the role of let's say proponents in a market is to make sure that the market is balanced. It's always the goal. You never want to have a one-sided market if you can help it. So we increased on both sides, not just on the buy side, but also on the sell side. I do think though that buy market limits are now slightly increased in comparison to the increased sell limits, and that's mainly because there are more orders on the sell side than there are on the buy side. It also there's this thing. The reason why they were put there in the first place was to limit people from coming in with market buys or sells and then end up seeing slippage and not understanding the slippage. So we want to maintain some type of limit, but at the same time, we want to try and even out the book as well. The goal here is to get an active market where the book is general. It doesn't mean it has to be 50-50, but we want to see it get a little more, let's say, matured on both sides. What are your thoughts on Swift's GPI or the general thought of them utilizing DLT? Hold on, I just lost my question. So look, Swift is trying to compete. Obviously, they're saying that they're going to do R&D, that they're doing this or that they want to try and launch a project to use DLT. It may be too little, too late. Obviously, there's a lot of companies already trying to compete with Swift that want to knock them off the gladiator post, right? And some of those are banks. I would say actually there's a few consortiums of banks that are trying to push them off the I don't know, yeah, whatever I just said. Jesus, it's a long day. But anyway, there's definitely a lot of competition there. So I think it's late for Swift. They should have thought about this before. To be honest, though, they probably should have thought about using any technology to make their system more transparent and not necessarily faster, but cheaper. Because from Most people don't know what SWIFT transfers cost. To be honest, SWIFT transfers don't cost all that much. A SWIFT message for T+0, meaning that the order can actually clear the same day, is substantially less than your bank probably charges you for a SWIFT wire. So that transparency probably would have gone a long way. If SWIFT had been transparent, people think that because people say DLT, people get excited. People get excited about? You know what they get excited about? Like cheaper services, like things that are faster, cheaper, get things done quicker. Doesn't matter what the technology. Most people don't care how things work. They just care that they work. So I think Swift, right now there's not many. I don't think there's a technology that can actually compete with Swift in terms of the speed of transfers. Plus, they have to interoperate that with every single bank on the Swift network, which is a lot of banks, guys. Like 23,000 banks or something around the world. So that's going to take a long time. What they probably should focus on is not DLT right now, but focus on, well, let's make it transparent what banks pay to force the banks to charge less for Swift transfers. Then customers will inherently like Swift, and then whatever shit we pull out of our sleeve in the next year or so, that DLT, the customers will make the banks actually adopt it. So that's what they should be doing. Any updates on LHV self-assessment guidelines? Nope. I don't know how much more to say on that one, but no updates from LHV self-assessment. I hope we get an update soon. Soon. What I would say on that is that once funding rolls in here, one of the things we'll be doing right off the bat is pulling in our market maker that's already basically linked to us. Once we do that, and they can provide some liquidity to these tokens, then it makes sense for us to start hammering LHV again. Right now, while we can ask for an update, and we have, and we will continue, adding more assets right now without having the ability to price them. We got to the point, I wanted to add assets to a certain extent. We need to add something to the exchange. We needed to increase the amount of assets we had. One is a test, just to see if people are going to trade them because they were asking for it. And then two, just because, well, we needed to streamline our own ability, technically speaking, to do these things fast. We have already done that. We got to the point now where that's kind of done. We've realized that we need liquidity. Liquidity is the next step, then more assets. Thank you for the answers, Kev. So do you have enough funds for November, or will you use some more XCM? I think we actually do on tap right now have funds through November, yeah, or at least through the majority of November. But yes, as far as XCM sales, honestly, I think we're going to close a deal before that would be necessary. David, from a user's perspective, would you personally like the UI UX of CoinMetro's dashboard, the exchange platforms, etc.? Okay, full honesty here. So in the beginning, I would say that no. But here's the thing, right? I've learned in business that I can love something and then 90% of people hate it. And I've also learned I can absolutely hate something and say, no one's ever going to use this. This is the worst platform, the worst design I've ever seen in my life. And then you do a survey, and 10 out of 10 people say it's great. So I've learned to not take my personal opinion into account most of the time. When it comes to the pure design, let's say design. Now, design mechanics, meaning like you have round buttons, square buttons, and triangular buttons on the same page. Those type of things I'll still, scream about, that's for sure. Or the font is too big, or the font is too small, or it's too blurry, or I can't see anything. Those type of things you can always fight about. But in terms of the actual flow, and then what the thing looks like, I thought, I have a pretty good, aesthetic eye, but sometimes I'm wrong. So from a personal perspective, I think we've gone leaps and bounds. The first releases are nowhere near where we are today, that's for sure. I would say right now, I think our simple platform is something I probably would never use because, well, I wouldn't be doing simple exchanges. I think we can still use a bit of cleanup there. I think now's the time that we can kind of compact it a bit more, and we're working on that. But I would say that it's better than most any other crypto exchange I've seen that has a similar simple exchange interface. When we talk about the Express, I think we've come leaps and bounds from intermediate, right? Leaps and bounds. For me, there's things there that I like. I think the order form isn't for me because, well, I've been around trading systems for a long time, and it's not the type of order form I would use. Having said that, I do think that it's intuitive for people that have never used an order form, right? Buy, sell at the top, not bid or ask. It changes from green to red. Those colors pretty much symbolize buy and sell in most people's minds. So unless you're colorblind, then, well, you're screwed anyway. So at the end of the day, I think that I still think, look, there's always improvements that need to be made. Trade platform, I would use it, and I'm not saying that it's the best on the market yet, but I think it can compete pretty well with almost anything else that I've seen on the market. There's a lot of companies that try to go and make these professional platforms when there's no professional traders in crypto. Now, if you think you're a professional trader and you're listening, sorry. But when I talk about professional traders, I'm talking about desk traders, guys that have been trading. Now, maybe they do it for a hobby, but when it comes to guys that absolutely need, look, a real trader in another market, you know what they look at? Whether they're a technical trader, wherever they are, they still need fundamentals. They need real-time news. They need data on the assets they're trading. They need to understand when there's news stories that break, et cetera. No platforms are integrating that for the most part, right? And there's really no new, there's not a lot of add-on services that exist for traders in crypto yet because there really aren't any. That's why. You might trade crypto, doesn't make you a crypto trader. Or you might call yourself a crypto trader, doesn't actually make you a trader of crypto, if that makes any sense. So I think we have updates that need to come. I think we do need to make changes on all those platforms. I think the Go platform needs the biggest update of them all. But we've come a long way, and I can generally say that compared to before, I like them. But they still need, I will never be satisfied, right? I'm the type of person that I can be happy, I guess, right? I can be happy in my life, but I'm never satisfied. Most entrepreneurs that try to do things in life are never satisfied. If you're easy to satisfy, then it's hard to become successful. And when I say successful, I mean success can be different for many people, right? But successful usually means that you never hit a ceiling. Whether that's you're looking for money, whether you're looking for respect, power, whatever your dream of success is, if you become, at some point complacent, then you never reach your goal of success. Okay, well, I went off on a tangent on that one. I'm sorry. Earlier today, Oliver mentioned something about a hookup with a CEO founder, big project. I will. Well, no, I can't divulge anything. It's a large crypto company that may or may not be listed on CoinMetro. More news to follow on that once we actually have the conversation, right? Because I don't know where it'll lead, so we'll see. What do you think Bjorn can stop asking about funding? I think before the end of the month, Bjorn will be able to stop asking about funding, at least for a decent amount of time. Just heads up on the XCM limits. Currently, buy and sell limits are symmetrical. Okay, cool. Thanks, Pavel. Appreciate that. So I guess right now symmetrical, cool. So yeah, been raised on both sides. We have been talking internally, like I mentioned previously here, that we do, while we have asymmetrical limits, or symmetrical limits, sorry, we have an asymmetrical book. So it may make sense to make the limits asymmetrical until we see a symmetrical book, then we can make the limits symmetrical again. Okay, thank you, Paul. Yeah, Paul actually explains that right below, so great. Are we going to see a very big change between right now and after funding? Any updates about CoinMetro in general? I think I made a lot of updates so far, well, changes, yeah. Well, there's certain pieces of the organization, marketing, support, compliance that'll need to be beefed up. That's for sure. There, we will start to do some marketing. That's for sure. We will more than likely pivot to focus on some other services that we may have not been focusing on, only because we didn't have time. Definitely, development we will need to build out a bit as well, so that we can move a bit faster on certain projects. So yes, you will slowly start to see changes. Just because you get funding in doesn't mean you can automatically go, well, now we have enough money to burn this much money, so let's just burn it. We will continue at relatively the same rate and increase over time in a very in a manner that's not just ridiculous, right? So you're not going to see from one day to the next 65 people in the office, that's for sure. But it will allow us now to kind of spark the flame and start to move faster than we have been. How is progress in Montenegro? Progress month. So, like we said, application for CoinMetro was submitted, what now, 3-4 days ago, I think, something like that. When did we submit that thing? I'm trying to remember when we submitted it. Actually, was it last week already? Jesus. Anyway, yeah, actually, yeah, because last week I mentioned it. That's true. That was last week. Was it last week? Christ, I don't know. I'm having just a bad day today in terms of memory. Anyway, so we haven't gotten a response yet. We were told that roughly 2 weeks to get the application processed. When we were going through the process with the CMA to create the sandbox, we agreed that 2 weeks her initial response was more or less dignified for the type of applications that the CMA was probably going to receive. So we're still within that time frame, and no immediate response back from them. But we have been back and forth in communications to schedule a workshop with the central bank for settlement with the central bank with stablecoins. So that's still in process as well. Tell us about MAP. That's Oliver's thing, man. You gotta tear up Oliver on Telegram about MAP. So he's the project lead on that one. I was actually in a meeting about that yesterday. Ideas are flowing and coming along quite nice. But yeah, you gotta pester Oliver about that one. What are your thoughts on viability of derivatives trading through DLT? Any trading through DLT, whether it be derivatives, whether it be spot, whatever it is not going to happen until there's until there's a distributed ledger technology that can handle the throughput required. And we're nowhere near that yet. There are technologies that are off-chain that combine off-chain with on-chain, side chains, all these things. But you need to bring the benefits of DLT and have scalability. If to get scalability, you need to remove one of the main benefits, whether that be auditability, traceability, or trustless consensus, etc. If you have to remove one of those main pieces, then what's the point of using DLT in the first place? So you need a scalable DLT solution that doesn't lose one of the major attributes of DLT. We don't have that yet. So I do think, though, that this technology issue, I do think eventually we will have a solution. When we have that solution, capital markets will flow on DLT infrastructure for the same reason that payments will flow and currency will flow on a DLT infrastructure, because it's just a better database and it allows better traceability and better accountability. And eventually it leads to a system that is disintermediated and doesn't require so much oversight, but at the same time can be probably fair. So it will happen. The question is, the first thing we need, though, is the technology. And doing it on an off-chain or whatever in a massive scale is stupid. You won't see that happen. Now, getting projects started, CSD will use some off-chain technology, obviously, at first, because it's a project that converts into a business. But you're not going to see a government or NASDAQ or the CME or the CBOE go full blockchain if they have to use a side chain to keep the scalability and then lose some of the attributes of DLT. It just doesn't make any sense. They'll test a bunch of things. They'll do research and development, but we need the underlying technology first. What about TRAM, new website, other features? They seem to keep getting pushed back. Well, I wouldn't say that. So TRAM, I think what we're saying, first week in November now for TRAM. New website, that's darn close. I was looking at it today. There's still some things that need to be ironed out. But it could be as soon as next week for the new website. It could be the week after. It all depends on how quick we can iron out the kinks, but it's very, very close. And also XCM locking and all that good stuff is also, I think, technically ready to go. We're simply waiting for TRAM. Now, because of the November 1st thing, we're trying also to get a first version of MAP out around the same time, because MAP is going to help the TRAM to map itself, I guess. I don't know. But it's going to help, and it kind of ties in. It's going to allow some cross marketing. I think it'll be a good thing, and that should tie in hopefully well with some trench of fundraising as well, so that we can push that out to the mass market. So when do you think we can finally get the snowball rolling? Well, it should start snowing here probably in November. So the first snow we have, I will make a snowball yay big, about the size of my head, and then we should be able to start to roll it at that point. Having said that, yeah, look, guys, I've said this over the last couple of weeks, right? Ever since the Brazilians, might have been a month and a half, but in many aspects of the company, we're now getting to the point where we've been kind of pushing this snowball or whatever up a hill, and a few times it's rolled back over us and we've had to push it back up again. But we're getting to the top here, and we're very quickly about to pick up lots of speed and lots of momentum. You guys have been with us this long. Hats off to everybody who's been with CoinMetro since the beginning, since before the beginning. There's actually shareholders of the initial structure that have been here for 5-6 years, guys, myself included. Before CoinMetro was CoinMetro, when it was mining coin, and before that, when it was something else. Just ideas and guys getting together and trying to put something on paper. So hats off to everybody. It's been ups and downs all the way, but we are very, very, very close to getting that snowball really, really rolling. That's for sure. I heard about passive incomes based on algorithm. Can you give more information about that? Well, there's a system being created. There's a few passive. TRAM is passive income, right? So TRAM is where an algorithm trades for you. You copy the trades of the algorithm. You make money when the algorithm makes money. That's passive. Obviously, it could be passive losses as well in that case, but that can be passive income. ETCF is also passive income because basically you don't have to pick a basket. You're just picking a basket. You don't necessarily have to manage that basket. It's managed for you. You're picking a basket based on industry or risk profile, etc. That's something that we will release probably towards the end of this year, if not, well, probably early next year, actually, funding or not. Then outside of those, we're working on something that links all these things together. Margin posting as well, passive income. You just put your capital at work. You're basically staking your capital, and you're making money off that capital on a daily basis when people actually take that capital off the market. We're working on something that links all those things together that allows auto buy-ins from credit cards and hopefully as well bank accounts, kind of like a mutual fund. You buy in 50 a week, 100 a month, whatever it is. And that'll automatically buy a percentage of a portfolio, or automatically percentage will get toward margin posting. And then you'll be able to track that and be able to set goals like, pay for my daughter's school, pay for my wedding, whatever, pay for a new car. So all those things are coming, and all those kind of around this passive income model. How much do you sleep at night? See me, you are dedicating pretty much time for XCM. It depends. Last night I actually got 8 hours of sleep. Fell asleep early because I was in Riga all day, and the 2 flights back and forth, even though they were short, kind of tired me out. So yeah, I fell asleep like around 11 p.m., which was insane for me because usually I'm never in bed that early. Up around 7:30, 8, something like that. So yeah, I got a decent amount of sleep last night, but it varies. If I get 4 hours, I'm usually pretty good. Anything below that, I'm kind of spacey. But yeah, throughout, at the start of CoinMetro, I was probably up till 4 or 5 every day, and then I would sleep till about 10. Now I'm a little more regular in terms, but I still work and I'm online and doing something usually until at least 12, 1 in the morning. Though some nights 2, 3, some nights 4. It all depends. But I try to look, sleep is important, right? And I see all these entrepreneurs that are like, entrepreneurs don't sleep. I see CZ from Binance saying this all the time. And well, it's horseshit. Because the human body, no matter who you are, has a certain level where it can actually function. You think you're functioning at 100% multitasking, but you're not. Sleep is important. So I try to get my sleep. I try to do my best. But there are times when, you do have to get things done. And well, you got to get them done. That's it. When will Track and Station be released? I don't know. We got to find a product to stick behind those names, and then we'll release it. But yeah, I guess if we keep going down the same train motif, it's just going to get ridiculous at some point. We might have to branch out. CoinMetro initially, even though there is a train in the logo, Metro really is like metropolis, right? Train Metro is also a metro. Obviously, is also a metro, but so maybe we can start branching out to some more city names as well. I don't know. What do you think of the current XCM price? I think the XCM price is exactly where the market thinks it should be. That's how markets work. And I think the market, because the market doesn't know everything I know, that may or may not be a fair market value. What I do know is that very shortly the market is going to perceive that value to be low. So it's a matter of time. So look, markets perceive a price of an underlying asset, and that's how they value it. And so what it tells me, though, it gives me. I'm happy to say that we've been maintaining this 2-cent floor, even though there's obviously been sell pressure, and the market, the book itself is built up over time. We have maybe a lopsided book to a certain extent, but it's starting to become a more healthy book. That's a good sign. And again, I know that the market will perceive a higher price. It's just that's what happens, right? But so yeah, it's the price the market perceives. The markets maintain that price. And very soon the market is going to move because markets move based on perception. Outward perception changes when obviously you start to market. More people know about the product, more people see what we're doing. Well, more eyes on the prize, so to speak. How many XCM do I need to become a multi-billionaire? Why do you need the multi-billionaire, Bjorn? How much money do you actually need in life? You really need billions? What are you going to do with those billions? I don't know. That's way too much speculation, right? Because again, remember that these tokens are inherently linked to the volumes done on the exchange and the fees collected, but it's still utility based. So the company can do surprisingly well, and the token can do less well. The company can do surprisingly bad, and the token can do great, or vice versa, or any combination in between. The company can do great, the token can do great. I do think that over time, the market itself is going to start to correlate the true value of a company to the value of its utility token. That probably will happen. And that's going to happen because over time, the more people that trade, the more people that start to use certain types of analysis, especially fundamental, the more fundamentals that are followed will create different technical indicators, which will make the technical guys follow as well, just like every other market. And eventually you get a correlation between not just a perceived value, but an actual value to the value of the asset that's linked. Even though it's not a share or an equity share, it's still an asset that is inherently linked to the underlying company. Candy and stuff. Well, then obviously you need to be a multi-billionaire. So I don't know. I do think that the market cap for CoinMetro can definitely be in the billions. And if you put that in value and imagine the circulating supply of CoinMetro plus a depleting circulation supply over time as we lock and then hopefully eventually burn, or just lock forever, then you can do your calculations. But yeah, I look, there is a limited downside and a much less limited upside for a micro cap that is about to raise money and really start to market itself after building what is a decent set of products. So with this billion, I will buy more XCM, of course. Well, that self-fulfilling prophecy then. Okay, guys, look, we're about an hour and 6 minutes in. I know I took like 5 minutes to say nothing, so about an hour into the show, I guess. Thanks again to BlocksLive.tv. If anybody's still actually listening to this from Blocks Live TV, hats off to you guys. If you actually saw last week and came back, double hats off. So anyway, guys, thanks, guys. As always, have a great weekend. Spend some time with friends and family. Don't look at prices. Buy some XCM. You know the drill. Anyway, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. I'm here because I like to do this. I'm hoping you're here because you like to listen and ask questions. I'm hoping you're not being forced at gunpoint. If you are, send me a direct message. I'll try to help you out. Outside of that, tag me on Telegram at Kevin Murcko now. This is a new one. Inside of our channel, and I'll get back and answer your question. If you want, guys, seriously, like, show me some love. Follow me on Twitter, also at Kevin Murcko, Instagram as well. Trying to create that Kevin brand so that we can start to really promote CoinMetro. Once those funds roll in, I'm going to be speaking like crazy. So if you like to hear me speak, eventually you're probably going to see me somewhere live, close to home, and then you can heckle me in real life. Won't that be fun? All right, guys, have a great weekend. See everybody soon, and cheers.